The end of winter is near, at least meteorologically. A relief for many, including the farmers busy with calving, feeding out and shifting stock to fresh pastures. Growing fresh feed to keep stock fed is challenging, as low temperatures and reduced sunlight slow pasture growth. It's especially challenging in parts of the country like Southland, where I'm taking you next to learn about winter grazing management. I suppose not too muddy today, not too much rain recently. I'm at a dairy farm with Environment Southland, the regional council tasked with regulating winter grazing practices. With me are Carl Eriksson and Brad Thomas.
I'm Carl Eriksson, and my role is Freshwater Program Lead at Environment Southland.
My name's Brad Thomas, and I'm a Senior Resource Management Officer at Environment Southland.
And we're here on a dairy farm in Southland. It's a nice morning after a wee frost, but the sun's out and things are looking nice and green and not too wet underfoot. Can you tell me a little bit what the practice of winter grazing involves for some of our listeners, especially who might not know?
I guess down in Southland, the region goes around sort of 100 days without any pasture growth, essentially. So to carry capital livestock over the winter, our farmers down here need to put in, high density crops, high nutritional crops to carry those livestock through that winter period. Yeah, and that generally it involves planting of crops such as kale, as we can see out here, swedes, beets and other things, and generally getting as many animals in the paddock that the feed allocation allows, and then just grazing those stock within the same paddock throughout that winter period.
Break feeding, I imagine, is a big part of that, and making sure you're getting the most out of your pasture. So moving the fence lines within a paddock, breaking it up into smaller bits and grazing really hard. Is that kind of a fair description? Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah, it's break feeding. So there's usually a daily allocation. Some breaks are longer than that of feed for the animals, and then they are shifted once that feed's been consumed, and then they're offered another break, and so on and so forth throughout the winter until all the crops finished, essentially.
But winter grazing brings with it some environmental challenges, and not everyone manages things well. In the media, there have been confronting images of cows knee-deep in mud and news of farmers taken to court and fined. Environment Southland has rules and teams offering advice to help farmers through the season.
Some of the challenges involved with winter grazing is obviously the soil pugging and the ability for stock to move around on those paddocks. In order to manage some of those risks of sediment loss and nutrient loss, some of our rules include requirement for buffers and managing critical source areas, excluding stock from them to limit that risk.
Critical source areas are parts of the farm where water and contaminants collect, like gullies and dips in the land. Research shows if animals are kept out and these areas are left as pasture, which acts as a filter, farmers can reduce the pollutants coming off their land by a whopping 90%. This all helps to keep rivers and streams clean and freshwater species healthy. We head off through a crop of hip-high kale to see how this farm's doing.
You can see under here, there's still a lot of bare soil.
Yeah.
And so when you get hooves coming across here, and they pulverise the soil essentially, don't they, Brad? So they kind of seal things off, right? And so they turn the surface into a bit of a concrete. When it's all denuded, you'll find that the overland flow processes sort of start to kick in because of the sealing off of these surfaces, and so water tends to get carried in overland flow or run off, if you like.
It's just that compaction, isn't it?
Yeah, the compaction, right. Yeah.
I suppose, Carl, can you talk me through what we're looking at here and what good practice looks like? I see we've got, as you mentioned, a paddock full of kale and some silage as well along the boundary.
Yeah, so here's a paddock full of kale or chow, and there is, just out here to my left, there is a critical source area which does have a connection to a waterway, and so under the rules it does need to be managed, and the good thing is out here it has been managed, and the plough has been taken around the basin of the critical source area, and we see that it's left in pasture, which is ideal.
Carl's pointing out a gap in the crop with a gully leading to the waterway in the distance. When the stock are grazed, it'll be fenced off with hot wire. But there's also another complicating factor, the lay of the land.
This winter grazing paddock does have a slope which is heading downwards towards waterways, so when the animals are offered this feed, we would expect to see them start from the top here and then brakes shifted towards heading downhill, so that I guess what we're trying to encourage there is leave as much vegetation in between the animals and the waterways as you possibly can for the longest time.
And this all helps reduce those nasties getting into the river.
Within that too, down at the waterway, we would expect to see a 10 metre setback or a 10 metre buffer zone where from the water's edge to the beginning of the crop, we would like to see 10 metres. That's in the rules, essentially, yeah. So then it's just a matter of feeding the animals towards and keeping them out of the critical source area, which has been fenced off as we see. So this looks like it's set up for really good success here.
So, I mean, the main compliance factors with intensive winter grazing are identifying those areas of high risk, like critical source areas and buffers from surface waterways, ensuring stock are excluded from those areas, managing those higher risk areas. Planning right up into cultivation time is key to long-term success throughout the winter period.
So the requirements differ by the type of land and the degree of the slope, I suppose?
Yeah, correct. So for surface waterways, stock setbacks from those areas, if your land slope is less than 10 degrees, it's a 10 metre stock setback from a surface waterway, and for land slope between 10 and 20 degrees, that setback doubles to 20 metres. Anything over 20 degrees, it requires consent to cultivate, so it's worth reaching out to the consents team at Environment Southland to discuss the best way forward for that.
Environment Southland takes a proactive approach, ensuring farmers comply with the rules, such as preparing a farm plan, creating a 20-metre buffer from any regionally significant wetlands, and not grazing or cultivating the aforementioned critical source areas. The rules vary depending on the type of land, including things like slope and whether there are any waterways. Where environmental issues do arise, they are also tasked with investigating and taking further action. The Ministry for Primary Industries is responsible for any animal welfare-related concerns.
When we're out doing these inspections and visiting on farm, we obviously engage with the property owner, talk about options to mitigate the risks. Obviously, if there's a significant issue, that's dealt with through an investigation process. But oftentimes these incidents result in advice and education and managing further crops on the property going forward, just to try and exclude those areas.
Increasingly, farmers are turning to pasture-based wintering, where hay and silage is made over the summertime and fed out in a set paddock or on a feed pad. And more farmers are adopting virtual fencing technology using GPS-enabled cow collars.
I've definitely noticed an uptake in the use of halter and other systems over the last couple of years. I definitely think those farmers I've spoken to have seen real benefits and gains with that virtual fencing ability.
I certainly know there are more people adopting that technology, and that's great, because it obviously keeps stock out of the areas where you don't want stock to be in. And that's not just including critical source areas, that's also other sensitive areas like wetlands and other waterways and things. So yeah, I mean, technologies hopefully has a big role to play in making it easy to comply with these sort of regulations, for sure.
Carl Erickson and Brad Thomas from Environment Southland I was talking to there. They said this winter had been pretty good, with some great practice all in all. Regional rules for winter grazing already exist in the Southland Water and Land Plan, but the government has proposed changes to winter grazing rules in the Resource Management Act, which it's still working through. With this underway, Environment Southland has set up a farm plan advisory team to help farmers through this process. They can be reached on 0800 768 845. This is also the number to call for any issues.